City Matters.
Hello, and welcome back to hmTV at the Holocaust Memorial and Tolerance Center in Nassau County. I'm your host, Dr. Bernie Furshpan, of the series called Ordinary Heroes. I've talked to a lot of ordinary heroes that are not so ordinary. They're pretty extraordinary. And today I have an extraordinary hero who's been involved in the Jewish community, but also other industries, vertical industries that we'll talk about. But he's done a lot of great things, and we've done some work together, and I was quite impressed with his knowledge and his reach. And I'd like to welcome Joseph Wolkin. Joseph, how are you today?
Doing well. Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. I really appreciate it. How far did you have to travel?
Only 45 minutes.
That's not bad in today's traffic on the Long Island Expressway.
Yeah, not too bad.
So you're a Queens native. Is that where you live right now?
Correct. Yes. Whitestone.
Oh, in Whitestone.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've been there your entire life.
Whole life a Whitestoner.
Right. And would you ever consider moving from there, or this is your community, this is your base?
We'll say TBD.
Okay, I like that. Oh, yeah.
See what happens.
Yeah, we'll
where
find
life
out.
takes you.
Yeah, we'll stay in touch with you and find out
Yeah.
where life takes you. You know, life is a journey, and sometimes you have clients and businesses and friends that kind of bring you somewhere else. You've dealt with a lot of nonprofit organizations in Israel.
Yes.
I'm surprised you don't live in Israel.
I am too. There was a time where I thought I would, again, when life hits you, reality hits. It's hard to leave your family here.
Right.
But it's my second home. I love Israel.
You really go out of your way for the nonprofits in Israel and the Jewish community here as an advocate as well. So tell me a little bit about your background with that.
Yeah.
And when did it start?
So it really started when I was 12 and I started going to Hebrew school. I started very late. I was bar mitzvahed within only 9 months. I learned how to read Hebrew. And I just started to keep going to shul every week and start growing, meeting with my rabbi every week. And then when I went to Stony Brook is where I really began to grow with my Judaism and my advocacy. I became Hillel president very quickly. I was vice president as soon as I stepped on campus, basically, where everyone knew who I was. And it was very important to me to make sure that not only the Jews on campus were involved, but also there was non-Jewish allies who were coming to Hillel. That was very important to me. So that's really where it started. And then my career, I started out as a journalist before becoming a public relations person. And everything just goes hand in hand with me.
So did you study journalism?
Yes.
You know, you and I have a lot in common. First of all, I worked with Statesman and Fortnite doing their cartoons, and you wrote as I would assume.
Yeah, I was in the sports section.
So there you go.
I did barely do it, though.
Right.
I showed up whenever I felt like it because I was so involved in NASCAR at the time and just focused on Hillel stuff. So they would always ask me to help out whenever I could. So I would do some basketball coverage for them, a couple of other things, but nothing too major.
Right. We crossed paths also with sports, motorsports, and NASCAR. You know, I had a marketing agency 20 plus years ago. And, you know, I worked with NASCAR creating their pitch for their Nextel Cup Series, as well as their official fuel, which was Sunoco. And we made a pitch for many oil companies, but the ones that bought into it actually saw they saw the connection with their audience as well as the NASCAR audience, that there was an overlap, and seems to be very successful.
Yeah, it's still going. So you did a good job. It's over 20 years later, and
I know.
It's still going. It's amazing. But the ROI in motorsports is incredible because the car is literally covered in a sponsor usually. So it's very interesting. You know, this weekend there was actually an Israeli driver, a lone day, who competed and finished second in what's called the ARCA series.
No kidding.
Yeah, he almost won.
That is amazing. Do you know that the average fan of NASCAR drives about 200 miles a week to see a race?
Yeah,
Did
minimum.
You know? And they spend about $2,000. I knew these facts.
Yeah.
I'll never forget them. About $2,000 a year on tchotchkes. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, probably more actually.
Now that was
now,
back, that was 20
more,
years ago. Yeah. So you brought a young man here. for me to interview. Talk a little bit about him and what he's up to these days.
Ben's great. Ben Carasso came here. He had an advocacy tour in New York where he was speaking about being an Israeli spokeskid and what it means to be an Israeli child during a war. So we thought it was very interesting because no one really speaks about what Israeli children are going through. Everyone speaks about the other side, but never about Israeli children, which you and I both know how impactful this war, specifically since October 7th, 2023, has been for Israeli kids. Their PTSD is at all-time highs. They have unbelievable trauma that they may never recover from. And Ben took it on his own to say, you know what, I need to speak out on behalf of other children because no one's telling our story. They're not telling the story of how they run to bomb shelters, the amount of funerals they have to go to of their parents, of their friends' parents or relatives that they're losing. So it's very tragic. But Ben's amazing, and he speaks like an adult. It's crazy.
He's very well spoken.
Yeah. Crazy.
And very convincing and very confident, but not arrogant at all. Very just confident, speaks the truth, speaks from the heart.
The boldest 11-year-old you'll meet.
Absolutely. Yeah. I wish him the best.
Yeah.
He's still going around and talking.
Yeah, he's still going around. He has some tours upcoming, which we'll announce soon, and it's
very
pretty cool.
And you still represent him.
Still representing.
That's terrific. Yeah, what a good kid. And parents, too. I mean, look, parents who are willing, to support this, because they could have easily said, this is dangerous. We don't have the money to travel, but they found a way.
Right. But it's just amazing to see the comments he gets on his social media. I mean, this is an 11-year-old, you know, and people write the most horrific things you can imagine. It's horrific. Like,
this brings out the worst in humanity too, doesn't it?
Yeah, but at the same time, it brings out the great side and brings out the terrible sides. Our job is to look at it and evaluate as publicists and see what people are saying about someone literally who's a child, and you see the hate going on for against children. It's unbelievable.
I mean, we have the ability to express ourselves freely in this country. Not every country has, freedom of expression the way we do.
It's what makes America, America.
Right. But it crosses a line. Hatred crosses a line when it incites violence.
Right.
And I hope none of that is posted on his, and I hope it's removed, quite honestly. It's scary that people can be so mean and cruel, when we're all related.
Right. Every single human is a relative of another.
15th to 50th cousin, every single person. And we all share this tiny little pebble floating in the middle of the universe. And this is the best that we can do.
Right.
Shame on us.
It's crazy. That brings me to another point. Since we're at the Holocaust Center right now, I visited Auschwitz twice in my life.
Tell about your experience.
Both in college, and it was obviously it was tragic and really life-changing, though, at the same time. It was a wake-up call that you have to live every day to the best that you can, and also that you can make an impact no matter what you do, and you need to live a fulfilling life. So for me, visiting the worst place on earth actually became a blessing in disguise for me. It's really remarkable, actually, and I came back as a transformed person.
Isn't that something that people sometimes, in order to wake them up from their unconsciousness, need an adverse situation, circumstances that are sometimes scary, but extreme sometimes? Like my parents survived the Holocaust, which was an extraordinary circumstance and extreme conditions that they, went through. But it made them good people, generous and kind human beings who were not prejudiced, in fact, who believed in unity. And so sometimes people need to wake up. Those that are spewing this hate and vile, comments on social media, they need a wake-up call. You see, if they went through what Jews and other people around the world are going through during times of genocide, like even today, like in the Sudan, if they lived there for just 5 minutes they would understand. That would wake them up.
Well, unfortunately, a lot of people don't even know what's happening in the world.
Right.
They're fixated on Israel and Jews, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So it's very sad. And you see this in the media, where the media is fixated on
It is
Israel.
fixated, yes.
Unbelievably fixated on
From a
Israel.
tiny little country, it
Yes.
takes up headline news almost every day.
It's the main headline in every
for decades.
major newspaper. But even during the Holocaust, we saw that the New York Times hid the Holocaust in the back of the paper.
Isn't that
And
something?
legitimized something like the Red Cross, saying there's nothing bad happening in Auschwitz.
Right. The craziest
How has it changed? It hasn't changed.
Well, they haven't
unfortunately.
changed, apparently.
Yeah.
Because I don't hear any stories about Red Cross going into Gaza and looking for the hostages.
Well, they're a good
And-
Uber service.
What was that? There's
They're
no
good
Uber
at-
service?
They're a good Uber service.
Oh, okay.
It's terrible.
It's awful.
Yeah.
It is. It's awful that we have organizations, legacy organizations, that are supposed to, represent us and do the right thing.
Right.
But they're not doing it.
No.
And so what keeps you up at night?
What keeps me up at night? My clients.
They do?
No, not really, but in my head they do.
They do. Of course they do.
It's very important to me what I do. I think I represent a lot of amazing organizations and people, and it's important to me to always be on my toes, though, and brainstorming what I can do better, how I can be a better publicist, how I can make a crack through the media where normally it wouldn't crack through. It's very important.
What are some milestones and benchmarks that you set for yourself with clients that you maxed it out, you did the best you could with a particular client and get the message out there?
So I never guarantee anything. That's number one. You can't.
Right, of course.
I can't make a promise that you're
I
going to be in
understand.
the New York Times.
You can only promise that you're going to provide the service.
Right. So I say that I'm going to try my best. I show them who I'm pitching to.
Mm-hmm.
I give them a list of organizations, news organizations that I'm working with. I speak with journalists directly. The best you could do is try.
Right.
That's really it.
Mm-hmm.
And most clients are okay with that because they understand that it's a very hard, competitive business. And unfortunately, there's a bias against anyone who is a proud Jew right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we see that a lot too, where people really only like speaking with the Jews who they agree with, and that's it, which is very sad.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is sad.
So it's really about showing effort and explaining to people that we're doing the best that we can, but the media landscape right now is incredibly difficult.
And why do you think that is? Who's influencing them?
It's definitely not the Jews, that's for sure.
Right. But there's a lot of Jews in the industry.
Right, but we don't have the influence, believe it or not, based on the stereotype you'd think we would.
Right.
But we don't control the media, so it's really the organizations themselves. They all have an internal bias, leaning politically one way or another.
Why do you think that they're collectively punishing the Jewish community?
I'm not really sure. That's a great question.
I mean, it's a political issue that
yeah.
they have, but they're punishing Jews everywhere.
Right. So when you see a news organization...
I just want to give you an example. Let's say, Russia attacked Ukraine. I don't see anybody, preventing any American Russians
Right.
from having access to schools and publicity or anything like that.
Right. And the violence and the rhetoric that has been normalized in the media. Look at the New York City mayoral race right now. Who thought that we'd have a candidate who will refuse to say globalize the intifada is a bad thing? Mm-hmm. It's unbelievable. So I think there's a normalization of hateful rhetoric. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that these news organizations hold a different standard for Jews.
Do you think it's a combination of the new journalism and social media that's impacting young people? We're trying to combat that. Mm-hmm. We are a Holocaust educational and tolerance, and a tolerance center as well. We're trying to combat that. And we feel that we are effective to some degree. We have to pivot a little bit, bring it up to date. But we think that we're effective. But we're not affecting everybody. We're not impacting the whole society.
Right.
The whole of society. Really just young people at a certain age for a
young
certain,
people
for
are
a very
the most
short period of
important
time.
right now.
Yeah.
They're the most important, especially at the generation of AI. It's very scary what can happen and what can be perceived as real and what's not. You see a lot of images that come out of war zones that are completely AI generated, unfortunately, and people believe it's real. So that definitely has an impact, especially social media, like you said, of what goes in the news.
Right.
So if you see, for example, a social media post that says Gaza Humanitarian Aid Center was attacked by IDF soldiers. Well, there's actually no facts about that, besides the fact that Hamas said it.
Say it.
Right. So then videos come out and they're not real videos. They're made up videos, or they're decontextualized. They're cropped so you don't see it's actually Hamas soldiers shooting at people so they don't get the aid, because that hurts them in the long run. It's very scary. But, you guys are doing such fantastic work here, explaining to the young generation specifically. And most people in this country don't get that education right now.
They're not, because there's only, I believe, about 80 centers like ours around the country.
It's not enough.
It's not enough. And how many people are they actually impacting? And for a very short period of time, too. It's not like I'm spending days or weeks with these young people. It's an hour. It's 2 hours. That's it. And the state requires a very minimum amount of Holocaust education.
Right, and I'm a product of that, where I went to New York City public schools, and they barely spoke about the Holocaust. How did I learn about the Holocaust? From my shul, from meeting with survivors, and going there myself. That's really how I learned.
We did a film screening, a documentary that I'm in Europe. And people were moved, many of whom had no idea what happened in World War II at the camps.
Sure.
Because it's just not part of their curriculum. Some do and some don't. I think as they got older, they looked into it. We learn more when we're adults. I mean, I wish I went back to school, quite honestly, and the kids worked.
It's not too late.
We should flip it. I think kids should work because they don't want to go to school. And we as adults want to learn.
Right.
So I think it's backwards.
And you need to be learning throughout your whole life. You can't
really
stop
no,
when
you
school
can't.
stops.
But it's a bottomless pit. When it comes to the Holocaust education, it's a bottomless pit. People say, did you read this book? There are 20,000 volumes of books. I didn't read that book because I don't have the time to read 20,000 books. Or films, for that matter, right? There's so many films about it. But you know what? It's probably the most widely told story, the Holocaust.
Right. And even though it's the most widely told story, it still could be done better.
Yes.
It still can be told more frequently. The fact that it's not part of school curriculums in a larger way is highly concerning. And now you have people who are Holocaust revisionists, frankly, who are using terms and slogans for their political gains on both sides of the agenda. It's very scary.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So my job as a publicist to make sure I can't control what someone's going to write about or put on the TV, but I can certainly send it to them. And I've learned more often than not, when I do that, someone else hasn't. And that's very scary. So you see globalized intifada slogan being used. Most journalists, before I sent it to them a few weeks ago, had no idea this was being spoken about. No idea. And they don't know what it means themselves.
Right.
And it's unfortunate that they won't do their due diligence and research it too.
You've been a journalist student and a journalist for a number of years.
Since I was 18.
Since you're 18. And I'm not going to ask you how long ago that was, but let's put it this way. It's for a whole bunch of years, right?
Right.
When do you think, honest, clean journalism made a sharp turn? I remember as a young man, I would watch Walter Cronkite. He just stated the facts. Right. We created our own opinion. It's no longer facts, it's opinion.
Right.
So when did it make that turn? Does it have to do with ratings? Does it have to do with corporate, finance? What does it have to do with, really? And what is the reason why journalists are compelled to give their opinion, their personal opinions?
That's a fascinating question, because in my journalism school at Stony Brook, you would fail a class, actually, if you gave an opinion.
Really?
We had what's called an accuracy F. So if you give an opinion or have one wrong fact in an article, you failed that assignment. That's not the standard, unfortunately, in
Right.
most journalism
But
schools.
that's what they teach in school. I
We're
think,
in
no?
the era, though, Bernie, of everyone's opinion matters. So when you're a journalist, you think you have a platform and it's important for you to tell your perspective. So you could read, it doesn't matter what the perspective is. It could be the New York Times with a left-leaning bias, the Wall Street Journal with a right-leaning bias. You will see an opinion hidden in most articles because the journalists are now taught that your opinion matters. But in reality, that's not what people want.
Right.
People want hard news, and they can make their own judgment and their own opinion. So you could read the same story in 3 different newspapers. You're going to get 3 different perspectives. It's really scary. I think where it started was more so of the invention of cable TV and 24-hour news. That's really where it started, and they didn't know what to put on for 24 hours.
So they
now
needed
you
to-
have pundits. Now
Right.
you have opinions
It's
all the time.
entertainment, basically.
Right.
It's a form of
Yeah.
entertainment. And now people on their own are also being pundits on social media.
Right. And social media is scary because everyone has their own opinion. I don't really care who people vote for instance. It doesn't impact my life, what your political opinion is. But everyone posts about their political opinion. And the worst part about that is if you're on the other side of a person's opinion, there is no such thing as discourse. There's no such thing as hearing the other side. And that's what we're losing right now. In Judaism, we believe in the art of debate. Talmud study is literally debating nonstop. Where's the debates anymore? Now it's just people yelling at each other and saying, if you don't agree with me, I'm not going to be friends with you. And it's very sad.
It's very sad that it's come down to that.
Right.
It's come down to that. And I've experienced it myself. You know, and it's a shame that,
Right.
you know, my family's experienced that.
And its rhetoric similar, frankly, to the 1930s. And
It
the
is.
scenes that we see in New York City, unfortunately, are very similar to 1930s Europe. We're seeing Jewish businesses have their windows smashed. We're seeing violent protests in the streets. They're being characterized as nonviolent anti-war protests. But when someone does not even a deep dive, just look at the posters. It's very scary what the posters say.
Even popular figures, like artists,
Sure.
feel that they have a platform and to express their opinion.
Right.
But quite honestly, what makes them, you know, more important, more special about their opinion?
Well, what
but they're
makes them-
influencing. But
yeah.
what's scary is that they're influential.
Right. And what makes them knowledgeable? These are not things that they know about even.
Exactly. They really have no knowledge.
They have no idea what they're talking about. And more importantly, they don't know what the ramifications are
Right.
of their words. Their words
Can lead to violence.
And they have, unfortunately, in many cases. You see people like Gigi Hadid and Bella Hadid, for instance, posting about Palestinian protests all the time, and they've gone to them. Well, there have been multiple incidents where those protests, maybe not the ones that they were at specifically, but those protests have gone violent and Jews have been attacked. There was someone, Joey Borgen, who was attacked. He was just in Times Square, around that area, minding his own business, wearing a kippah. He was attacked. Now he moved to Israel because they won't want us to support Israel, but they don't realize their attacks on Israel are actually focused on attacking Jews in the diaspora, such as New York, and that in turn leads people to want to move to Israel more.
And that's what's going to happen. A lot more people are going to move there.
Right.
But it's a shame because that's not what this country is all about, right?
Right.
The premise behind this country is that we all stand united together, different and the same at the same time.
Right.
So this was an interesting conversation. I was wondering what direction it was going to go, but you have so much to say, Joseph.
I'm a yenta, that's why.
You're the male version of a yenta.
I'm a yenta.
No, you're a mensch, actually.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Joseph Wolkin, author, publicist, journalist. You've done a lot of great things, and you're supporting the community. but you're also making a living out of it. So it's a wonderful thing that you can actually do something that you love, right, and get paid for it.
And most people don't love what they do, so I'm very happy.
Yes, and God bless you, and God bless your family.
Likewise to you.
Thank you so much for joining me today on Ordinary Heroes here on hmTV. I'm your host, Bernie Furshpan. Until next time.